Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar The Last Airbender. I am Dan, and as always, I am joined by Chris Billingham, the late Airbender himself, who today sat down, not with me, but we watched it together but separate this morning. As always, we watched The Serpent's Pass. I just wanted, I was about to phrase it in a way that suggested we'd sat in our PJs, got some cereal, and snuggled up for a bit of Sunday morning cartoon action, but sadly, still, that's a lovely image to conjure up, isn't it? But yeah.
I know, but that is, I didn't have cereal, but that is what we did separately, I suppose. There's something oddly cute about that.
Yeah, but we record from our own homes, so we did not do this together, which is the eternal shame of this podcast. We should be like Ant and Dec and live 2 doors down from each other, so we can do that every Saturday morning, Sunday morning. Just come watch some Avatar. Right. Anyway, sorry. You can tell it's going to be a weird one straight away, can't you? I've already made it weird.
I just like it. But we'd have to both be in longs, and like it'd have to be proper pajamas.
Oh yeah.
In an ideal world, they'd be matching.
Yeah, matching pajamas, but also like you know that old pajama hat that people used to wear in the past. No one wears it, but it's like almost like a Santa hat, but it's the same fabric that your pajamas are made out of.
Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah, I don't know. I've only ever seen it in movies. I've never seen a human being own or wear one. But yeah, we both need those as well. That's to complete the image.
What? That's a really great point. What were they for?
I have no idea. Warmth? I don't know.
Just like.
Back when houses weren't
right, so it's called a nightcap.
Of course it is. Yeah, that makes sense.
A nightcap is a cloth cap worn with other nightwear such as pajamas, a onesie, a nightshirt, or a nightgown. History: nightcaps were frequently worn by the British Isles and Scandinavia before central heating was available, as temperatures would fluctuate frequently in the winter months. However, nightcaps are worn all year round.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, I don't know if I got to saying that, but I was just about to say like. I did say heating, but the follow up to that was probably maybe it had been colder back then. Without.
All right, Dan, you know more about nightcaps than me. Jesus.
No, I guessed. I flukily guessed more about nightcaps than you. That's what happened.
Your nightcap would have a D on, and my nightcap would have a C.
And we'd also have we'd have like with our cereal, they'd be in bowls with a C and a D on.
Yeah.
What we're essentially doing here is just planning our own Saturday morning kids television show where it's like, you know, idiots in pajamas. It's just me and you being like, hey kids, we're going a brand new episode of Pokemon. Just introducing shows that are airing on television.
Yeah, it cuts back to us. Just like, oh god, Dan, Pikachu looks in trouble, doesn't he?
Yeah. Oh no, Chris, what are they going to do to get out of this one? Team Rocket have really got them cornered this week.
When introducing this episode, I produce a fake steak and scare you with it, sort of thing.
I love it. Oh man,
it's the Serpent's Pass.
We just need to send this podcast as a pitch to the BBC or something, or ITV. Just cut this part of this podcast out and be like, listen to us come up with the brilliance that is.
Listen to us.
Chris and Dan's cartoon couch.
Like it's not even an original idea. Like, listen to us come up with what TV has been doing for years.
Shh, Chris. With the stuff they put on TV, they clearly don't know what TV's been doing previously. I keep seeing the same shit over and over again. They've clearly not noticed. So shh. Anyway, speaking of Saturday morning cartoons, we watched The Serpent's Pass this morning. It is the episode of Avatar, for those who don't remember, where the gang are trying to get to Ba Sing Se. Obviously, without an Appa, it's a bit more complicated. They try to go via ferry, but there's a whole mix-up situation with the passports, which, by the way, just from a screenwriting perspective, I must say, while that little detour is quite fun, ultimately they end up doing the thing they first said they were going to do with The Serpent's Pass, and there is a part of you that goes, why do we detour to a passport control office if we're ultimately just going to... But anyway, different story. We'll come to it. And then, the episode ends with them sort of having crossed the pass, but it's also, cameo week. Returning include Jet, Smellaby, Longshot, Suki, and everyone's favourite, the Cabbage Man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Cabbage Man's back.
Yeah. I've only just sort of... Where was he again? Because I think
So he was
I clocked it, but didn't clock it, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, so he was originally they saw him in where does not Ba Sing Se, the other big Earth Kingdom town, where Boomy comes from. Oh damn it! Oh my brain.
Pulling it up.
Omashu. I didn't even get to finish typing my question into Google before I remembered. It's Omashu. Because remember, it's Omashu. Okay. So the first time they went to Omashu and Aang and them were like scooting around on those those paths that slide down the city.
Oh yeah, no, I know who he is. I'm just wondering where he turned up here. Is what I meant. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So here he's at the passport control office, where they won't let him on. They won't let him on the thing because of his cabbages, and he goes, "My cabbages, my cabbages!" again.
Yeah, there we go. I'm just watching it now. You know what it is? This is right around the time I was texting you, like, are we gonna have to watch 44 minutes? Because I suddenly looked down and was like,
"We'll come to this." For listeners, Netflix have strapped this episode of The Drill together to both mine and Chris's dismay when we both left enough time to watch one episode before recording, and then started it, and when realised it was, then saw it was 40-odd minutes. After a minute or two of me scratching my head, and then thumbing through the episode when realising the second half was just The Drill, which is a separate episode. There is a reason I've discovered they're together, but I don't agree with it. But hey-ho.
Right, okay.
We'll come to that later. But yeah, so that'll be why Chris missed that. Yeah, so yeah, the Cabbage Man's back. And he got to say, my cabbages! And everyone cheered, and we're like, yeah, he said the thing. That's what happened.
I love Cabbage Man. I'm gutted I didn't take that in more. I've just found it now. It's a very good scene.
Yeah, it's a good little bit. It's a good little quick gag. I don't mind the stuff at the sort of fake airport. The sort of like the the customs, like that idea that you can't bring fruit and veg into Ba Sing Se. It might have certain like pests on it and stuff, because that's obviously like a reflection of like real life. That's a reflection of like what it's like to go in an airport. It's like, oh, it's kind of a parody sort of, but the Avatar version of it. I get it, and it's funny, but like I just story wise, I don't know why it's there.
Yeah, and I think you could make an argument that like it better be fucking impressive. The city, there better be, because I mean they've roamed. Do you know what? I don't know. They've had a big flying thing, so maybe actually, I suppose, to be fair, Appa maybe negates some of this usually, but I guess we've never seen them go in this trouble to get to somewhere else, I guess is my point.
Right. Well, I mean, you could argue the entire first season was them trying to get to the North Pole, so that was quite a lot of trouble.
Yeah, but they never had like an airport.
There were about 18 episodes worth of trouble before they arrived.
No. I mean, what I mean by that is they never had like an airport scenario, but then they've always had Appa. So
exactly. Yeah, you got to assume that like these sort of like customs things like might exist elsewhere. You got to imagine, actually, I mean, I suppose it's one of those things where you got to imagine that the Fire Nation probably are quite strict at checking incoming visits, because obviously they're currently at war. You don't want people sneaking in from other countries and doing usurpy things from the other side. So you'd imagine the Fire Nation have some level of checking going on. But yeah, so the Ba Sing Se is clearly very controlled, but it is also one of the last standing proper like Earth Kingdom cities now. Obviously, with Omashu being gone, maybe that's maybe that and this evident refugee crisis that this episode kind of hints at has kind of prompted Ba Sing Se to be tighter on security and stuff than they'd needed to be previously. Maybe it was a bit more free travel-y, and then it was like, there's tons of refugees, and now it's like, okay, we're going to have to put some sort of controls in place, because otherwise the city will be overwhelmed or whatever. It could be that, and that is something I suppose I didn't quickly get to in my recap. We can start with that, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's really clever to use this idea of a refugee crisis. Yeah, if the Fire Nation have gone around and trashed every major Earth Kingdom city, like we have seen that people have tried to stay in these cities and have just had to deal with the Fire Nation. We've had several examples of Earth Kingdom cities under Fire Nation occupation. But obviously, some of these cities are either going to be burnt down or people are just going to leave because it's dangerous for them there. There was that city where all the people who could earthbend were being imprisoned. If you were an earthbender, you'd be like, right, I'm out. Like, you'd get out, hopefully, before being caught. And that would obviously, I mean, that would lead to a refugee crisis of a sort. And they don't really shy away from that in this episode. They clearly make it that there's a lot of people that have been displaced and that it's quite a tragic thing. And that's, I don't know, that's, for a show that's as old as this is, it's weirdly poignant. I don't know, it's, I can't speak for our American, our American listeners, but in Europe particularly, like there's been a refugee crisis going on for some time that's like become a real like hot topic. Obviously usurped by another piece of news, another global event that's occurred in the last, I don't know, year or so. But definitely an issue, and definitely something it was at top of a lot of talking points, particularly even in the build up to Brexit. So it just felt like this show kind of like it just feels weirdly poignant to watch it now. Obviously, there have been many refugee crises through history, so they were obviously just drawing on that. But like watching it in a modern context does make you go like, it makes you feel like this episode might be almost timeless for a long time. Like these issues aren't going away.
And what's impressive is, particularly poignant, and we're very aware of it now. Yes, but either way, what an incredibly adult and deep theme to explore in this show.
Right.
Like really, just really nicely done. Like going there and looking at this topic.
Yeah, I think they handled it like with very very lightly on purpose, because it's not like it comes up in the episode and it's a clear problem, but like it's not like the episode is about that. I think that's kind of like the exact right amount of approaching it, because I think if you went any deeper, you'd be like, it's a kids show, back off.
Yeah, but it's still exploring it. It's still giving. Sometimes among the best thing you can do is give people or give children a base knowledge for when something else comes up. So if this helps a child go, oh, I remember seeing that in Avatar. It still might make a connection, which is still
right.
An incredibly worthwhile activity.
Yeah, if they really wanted to make it more poignant, they'd have had it so that the Earth Kingdom were, Ba Sing Se specifically was, like, oh, we can only take about 10 of you, 1,000. The rest of you can just, good luck. That'd be a little bit, that'd be a little bit more accurate to what's happening.
Well, it turns out when they get there, there's a massive old drill coming for them anyway. So
this is true. It's funny that, is it? Because like obviously we talked about Ba Sing Se for a long, long time, and every time there's been talk of the epic wall of Ba Sing Se. The genius of this episode is you barely get to see any of it, and then there's a drill, and it's like, oh shit, like yeah, a drill would very much be a problem for a big wall. Like that does seem like the answer to the problem of how we break through.
What you saying? It's taken them a few too many years to come up with that.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the technology of it is. Maybe it does seem they've been talking about like. Well, I guess maybe I'm thinking more of the film. There's the Fire Nation seem to have machinery. We had that episode. Was it last series where they just invented air balloons? So clearly the technology is only just catching up to some of this stuff. But yeah, there is a part of me that thinks Big Drill probably should have been first choice.
Did you finish recapping the episode?
Who knows, mate? I'm clearly more drowsy than I thought, so we'll just carry on.
Fair enough. I agree with you about, though, airport shenanigans are fun, but potentially did we need to go there when my thing is well hold on a second. Dan, have you got your walking boots on?
Primed and ready.
We're going to nitpick corner. I think I did that one last week. I think I need to think of another one. Hold on. Oh, Dan, have you got your passport and some euros? No, forget it. I mean, it's just the same one, but just with a different thing. It's just not clever.
I like that it's different every week.
Hold on.
I feel like that your passport and euros one was just a bit politically charged, because my response was going to be, yeah, Chris, my red passport.
Yeah. Dan, have you got some snacks with you?
Oh, I have. Yeah, packed and ready. Where are we going?
Snacks for the road. We're going to nitpick corner.
Boom.
That was good. I like that one.
Yeah.
I think there was a moment where Aang left at the end where I was like, it's quite a dangerous situation to leave him in, Aang. And I think if they, throughout the episode, had embedded this theme of, because it was a lot about, are you okay? Are you feeling all right? He didn't want to get the rage stuff, which I really liked, and I liked his Katara stuff. I think it was a bit quick at the end, seeing the baby and giving the big speech, and suddenly he's out. Like, I would have probably liked that explored a bit more. It felt like the episode knew that people would be going, you were pretty mad last week. Why are we now opening with you dicking about in water and stuff? It felt like the episode was going, oh yeah, no, this is why. And my big thing is, if they'd have explored that stuff, maybe not repeated a few of the same beats and explored it a bit more, the ending would feel a bit less sudden, because I felt like you could have had Katara say, it's okay if you want to go and get Appa, just go, and him going, but I don't trust myself to not flip out like I did before, so I'm going to stay here with you guys, and then learn that he could trust himself somehow, and then he goes. Whereas it feels like it was all about one thing, and then at the end he's like, right, we've just gone through this stuff, you know what, I'm off and going to leave you guys. And no one seemed to mind, but I didn't realise the goal was him going off on his own until he went off on his own. And I think they could have embedded that a bit more.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that choice at the end? Because it's like, I think it's... They put them in a weird position, because you create this moment where Aang is like at his most furious, but then you've got a show to continue, and it's like, well, how do we have adventures if we're gonna make if we're saying this they don't have Appa plot is going on for more than even an episode. So if we're assuming that that's some sort of running arc, even for just a couple, Aang would be very upset at Appa being taken. So that's tick, correct? Then you have to go, well then, whatever episodes occur from that point from the initial anger to plot resolution, whatever that may be, how do we adjust and address for Aang's emotional state? And I kind of like the premise of this episode, when you lay it out on paper, is really good, which is that Aang is so scared of himself in the Avatar state that he's pushed his feelings down. He's buried them because he doesn't want to lose control again. And the idea that he's almost abandoned hope, like it says on the sign above the Serpent's Pass, and is just fighting to keep himself not enraged, is a really good plot and a good way to have Aang be able to take part in an adventure without being, mopey, angry Aang again, which we don't want for more than an episode or two. But the execution is slightly wonky, I feel. Because the episode opens with him joking and laughing around in the water, as you said. Then it has him being like, all mopey for a brief second when they remind him about Appa. And then it has him just being like, really like, I don't know, almost like personalityless. And it's a bit, because the opening is a bit inconsistent. If it just opened and Aang wasn't joking about, but he also wasn't mopey and he was just right in the middle because he's just suppressed everything, I feel like the whole episode would flow a lot better. And then... I agree. And at the other end of that story, Aang discovering his hope again, as you said, was a bit quick and a bit easy, and maybe if there'd have been more stuff embedded in that, you'd feel a lot better about that end of it too. So then the whole arc would feel a little bit cleaner. I just think basically the in and out for that story were both a bit botched. And then you're right. Then there's this whole idea of when he gets this up, he goes, "Okay, I'm feeling hopeful again. I'm gonna take action. I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna just sort of sit by and suppress everything. I'm gonna be somebody who takes action again." But they don't make that very clear either. So because I don't think the plan ever was for Aang to go off ahead, but I think he realized once he got his hope back, he was like, "Well, we know they sold Appa to someone, Ba Sing Se. Ba Sing Se is where we're heading. It's not far from here. I can glide there. I'm just going to get on this because I don't want to be doing nothing anymore. I don't want to be sitting on it anymore. And I get that, but it's, again, the show doesn't express it properly. So this episode does leave a lot to be desired. I think there's a lot of good ideas underneath in the subtext, but they should have been the text. Is, I guess, my point. They could have been cleaner in the text with different execution. That's, I guess, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it almost feels like it should be 45 minutes of just this, because there's so much it's exploring and playing with.
Honestly, I don't even think it needs more time. I think it just needs better execution in the time it has. Like, I just think they need to, like, it just needed a rewrite where they would, like, less, a little bit less dicking about. Let's not start with him laughing and giggling in the water, because that creates. He's all over the place. Then. If you try and track Aangs' position through this episode, his whole personality and like mood is just everywhere.
And we've had certainly this season, I think, because of the statics and both being particularly busy, work-wise and personally wise, we've had the biggest gap, I think, certainly this season between recordings.
Yes.
And it still jarred with me. So it's not even like we watched the last episode yesterday,
right?
And it
was like 2 weeks ago.
It jars. It jars when you watch it close together. Of course, it does. No, we watched this like you say, a good fortnight ago was when we watched The Desert, and it still threw me when they're all perky and gallivanting in the water at the beginning, and
Yeah, and I think that it's not so much that is in itself a problem. If you were gonna start the episode with Aang perky, you can do that and say it's been a couple of weeks and have them say how you're feeling, and him going, no, it's okay. I mean, I'm trying to be in a better, more zen place about it. I'm feeling hopeful. We're gonna go get Appa. But if you want to tell the story of Aang having lost hope, you can't start it with that. You can start the story of Aang saying, I'm feeling hopeful and we're going to go get Appa with the water thing, and that's your explanation for why he's not miserable. Then that's fine. That's one line, and I wouldn't have minded. But it's because the story they've chosen to tell is that Aang is still struggling with it. Starting like that then becomes even worse in retrospect. So yeah, it affects the whole flow of the episode and the whole character arc Aang goes through in this episode. Again, I don't dislike this episode, but it is flawed, I think, in its execution. And there isn't really an easy answer to how to fix that other than just keep it consistent with the characters and where they're at emotionally, because I think everyone's a bit all over the place this episode. The Sokka Suki plot is equally, well, maybe not equally, but also a little bit hard to track emotionally, like where they're at, because I don't know, because Sokka's obviously so happy to see Suki. I don't know, maybe that one tracks a lot better actually now the more I break it down in my head, because obviously, so for those who don't remember, this is the episode where Suki comes back and she has this kind of brief sort of like charming, slightly flirty interaction with Sokka, but later on it sort of evolves a little bit more, and then he sort of has to. It's this whole plot of like him protecting her, I guess, because of Yue, and having lost Yue, it's made him like overprotective, and it has this moment where they sort of come together, but Sokka's like, it's not going to happen, and it's very cleverly framed. It happens, with the moon literally hanging over them because Yue still hangs over their relationship, which I thought was genius bit of framing. And then obviously it ends with them kissing. I can't remember what. Man, I tell you what, you can tell that I'm exhausted because my brain has gone over the place. How does their plot? There's another moment where they kiss, but I can't remember right at the end. What's the context for that?
He says to her, "You talk too much," and then he
right out of nowhere
he kisses her
with no. Yeah, so here we go. So it's because I'd forgotten that moment, but I knew something about that character arc had not quite fit for me. Yeah, what changed his mind?
Yeah, it's true. Like, I'm bringing it up now. Yeah, because he's like, you were here to protect me. And she sort of says yes, and they have that dialogue. I'm just bringing it up now. But there's no sort of... He doesn't ever clarify with her why he's been the way he's been. He just sort of... She's a bit over-explaining in kind of her reasoning, and he kisses her and says, "You talk too much." Oh no, she begins to say, "Listen, I'm really sorry about last night. We were talking and saying things," and then he breaks. I assume what's about to happen is he breaks it away. But yeah, he breaks it up with a kiss. So he never sort of clarifies his position.
Yeah, he never explains to her about Yue, does he? He just says he lost someone close to him.
No, and also, like, she's sort of defending herself. He's the one that's been behaving weird and needs to sort of... He's the one that needs to do the talking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's... So the on paper character arc of Sokka not being sure he can move on from Yue is fine. It's a great choice. It's an interesting story. I'm here for it. The same way that I was here for the idea of Aang being so scared of the Avatar state he suppressed all of his feelings, which is not a healthy thing to do. Both of those plots, A+, A for effort.
Yeah.
I'm on board with both of those plots, but both executions are wonky, and it's hard. So it's hard to enjoy this episode at its fullest because you have to really dig to make sense of the character stuff in this episode.
I've just gone back. They go to kiss, and he's like, "I can't, I'm sorry." No, he says, "I can't." She says, "I'm sorry," and he basically says, "You shouldn't be," and walks off. I don't think it's her that owes the explanation in the apology here. He needs to be clarifying why, and like you say, it's about Yue and stuff.
Yeah, and that's understandable and acceptable. You can't rely. The audience know that, but Suki doesn't, and Sokka does owe her an explanation, and so it kind of works, but it also kind of doesn't. So it would make more sense if there was a scene where how to fix that actually pretty quickly. I think is to have a scene where Yue talks to Katara and says, "I don't know, Sokka's being weird. I'm not sure," and then Katara says, "Yeah, he's probably not too comfortable talking about it yet, but he, his girlfriend turned into the moon." It's kind of weird.
That's the trouble. That's the problem. How do you cover that? We've landed on the problem with the scene, Dan. How do you sum that up?
You're right. Maybe the writers did write a scene where Sokka explained, but it took 25 minutes.
I tell you what, actually,
had to cut it.
I tell you what, actually, because you don't need to go into the details, do you? Is something going on with has something happened with Sokka? He lost someone. That's probably actually all you need.
Yeah. I guess it's because he says he lost someone earlier in the episode to Suki. So I suppose it's more.
Yeah.
He had a girlfriend, and he had a girlfriend of a sort that he lost. He had a relationship, and she was taken away. Making it a bit clearer about what their relationship was, I guess, because I think Sokka does use the words "I lost someone" earlier in the episode.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. So it's all a bit imperfect. Basically, this episode it's full of great ideas, but I don't know if I particularly care for the execution. Also, I will say it's a cavalcade of hey, remember that guy? And that in itself is a bit distracting too. I like these characters coming back. I like that the world is slowly built up of characters that we're seeing, and even like last week, I think it was the Rough Rhinos, which are just a division of the Fire Nation's military forces. They're weapons experts. The fact that they were just in another episode, it's just that creates a world consistency. They're still roaming about. Of course they are. It makes sense that Jet would be still roaming about.
Yeah, and the Jet thing, and just before I forget it, one quick thing, just because a fantastic moment is obviously Toph trying to cross the water, and struggling because it's not Earth and she can't see. I do sort of feel like someone should have thought about it and maybe helped her a lot earlier, and maybe travelled with her across that bit, but they're in a panic, etc., etc.
And there was a part of me that wondered, couldn't she raise up a rock platform from under the ground that took her there instead of going on the ice? Because she raised up the rock platform that she was on.
Oh yeah, and just skimmed it like a hoverboard.
Well, no, I don't think she could have moved it because it's attached to the ground. Oh, maybe she could have. Yeah, maybe she could have diced it up and then slid across. But anyway, even if she couldn't do that, she could have raised up more rock from underneath to create a bridge, couldn't she? Couldn't she have just kept bringing up platforms and just walking forward?
Yeah, that's a point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Unless the water like blocks her seeing it, maybe. So
Yeah, but she
couldn't
did it the
find
first
there
time.
to-
But she was down under the water when that happened. Yeah, maybe.
But I loved that moment. I
Yeah,
loved
it's incredible.
Suki saving her and like, okay, you could leave me to drown because she's embarrassed.
Yeah, I wrote
about
this
the soccer
exact
thing.
I wrote this exact dialogue down because it is one of my favorite exchanges in the entire episode. It's so Suki saves Toph and she's like, "Oh, soccer, you saved me." And Suki's like, "Actually, it's me." And she's like, "Oh, well, you can go ahead and drown me now." And she's just is such a great line. I love that moment so much. Yeah, and it says something interesting, I think, about like Toph as a character. She's not completely like self-dependent. Like you get this, this whole Toph thing of like I carry my own weight, but here she was helpless and glad of a rescue. She wasn't like I could have got myself out of that, which is how you might have expected Toph to act after her first. She is not an uncomplex character. She's not a one-note character. She had, you know what I mean? There's more to her than just the usual because it would have been so easy for her to play it the other way, right? Like the way that you'd expect, which is to be almost ungrateful, like a bit of being saved and frustrated she couldn't help herself. But she was totally okay with in that situation, understanding sometimes I'm going to be at a disadvantage and I'm going to need help, and that's very sort of admirable. It's a good quality for Toph to have.
I like the reminder as well, just reminding the audience that she's rich. It didn't necessarily. I mean, it literally potentially the most pointless bit of the episode because they don't use the tickets, but I like the reminder of the weight and the power that she has. I think that was clever.
Yes, for those who don't remember, when they get to the sort of airport thing, they want to. That's actually another really good joke in the episode is where they're trying to get through customs and get tickets, and they're like, "Well, that passport's you can't come through." And Sokka's like, "Well, he's the Avatar." She's like, "I've seen 50 avatars today, and it's not even a particularly good costume." And the camera just cuts over. It's like 8 guys in really shit Avatar costumes. So good,
it's very good, very very good.
And the sort of I say payoff. The conclusion they come to is Toph sort of says, "Hey, I'm with the Beifong family. I'm very rich and powerful. Give me a ticket. Here's my passport and papers. I need these people with me. They're my assistants, because I'm blind. They help me on. This is my seeing eye lemur."
That was great.
Which I thought was very funny. So. Yeah, I thought that was a really good idea, but as you pointed out, super pointless because seconds later. They can't even use the ticket, so why even do the whole? I guess for the jokes.
It's not even them. They can.
The jokes are
the
funny.
Family can't.
What was that? Sorry?
They choose not to use them because the family have lost their tickets, so they choose to do it that way.
So is the idea there just Aang is so selfless, even though he could get across easily, he decided he was going to help this pregnant lady cross the Serpent's Pass. Is that was that just a hero moment?
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. It's just like you say, it makes the passport thing redundant.
Because if you wanted to shorten the amount of time spent in the airport to sort of get more time, I keep saying airport because it's designed after, but you know what I mean, Full Moon Bay or whatever they call it. Wouldn't the easier thing to do have been to have the pregnant lady be in front of them in the line?
Yeah.
And then she can't get on, and they go, well, I guess we're all doing the Serpent's Pass then, without having to do the whole, we can't get... Yeah, I don't know.
You don't get the reminder about Toph being rich, and possibly those dudes tracking her are going to come through, chat to the woman, maybe, and I assume. And I suppose you could do it that way for that reason. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's a really like you said at the start. It's all really great content, but when there's other things of the episode that are handled a bit quickly and not explored in more depth, it jars a little.
Yeah, I think you can have jaunts and flights of fancy with fun joke bits and little sections like this. In an episode that's doing less and doesn't need the time. I guess what we're getting at. There's nothing, strictly speaking, wrong with any of that content. It's just the choice to do a separate bit like that in an episode that really could have used that time to make its other plots clearer and work better. Then it becomes frustrating. And it's not this sequence's fault, because, again, funny ideas as you pointed out, tells a little bit about Toph. Once again reinforces how heroic Aang is, how selfless Aang is. Well, I guess we're going across the Serpent's Pass. I think that's fine, and the idea is embedded in that. But again, a little jaunt like that just feels out of place when you really need that time, or could use that time to clear up, smooth out some of the plotting, which we've already pointed out didn't quite work for us. I
will say though, none of this, in my opinion, applies to the B story. The execution, the way the pacing, the B side. So Jet's return, him stealing food with Zuko, etc. I think was all done wonderfully.
Yeah, everything from how they first meet to this whole, we're both outcasts, and those outcasts have got to stick together. And also, I mean, even Iroh's little side plot, the idea that before Jet shows up, he's talking to Zuko, and he's returning to the idea of last time I was at Ba Sing Se, I came here as the enemy, sieging it, and little did I know, so many years later I'd be entering it as a tourist. Which has that great response from Zuko where he's like, yeah, you're not a tourist, you're a refugee, and this sucks. Which is good point. Good point, well made. But I again, it's Iroh's positive take on everything. And also, this plot does have, what might be one of my favourite scenes in the whole show, which is when Iroh misgenders Smellaby, and Smellaby walks off looking upset. Longshot follows and just puts his hand on Smellaby's shoulder and just nods. And Smellaby's like, yeah, you're right. As long as I'm confident with who I am, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And then he just nods again, and then they go back. So good.
I really liked all the Iroh stuff as well, because it felt like Iroh's been consistently against doing stuff like this, robbing from people and bad behaviour the last few episodes.
Right.
But the notion that he's hungry enough to be like, yeah, fuck it. And obviously, maybe the guy's a bit more of a villain and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed anything with Iroh as well.
Yeah, I think it is really well handled, because it's it doesn't. It doesn't promise more than it can deliver as a story. It's not. They've not gone too big with the concept for it. It's quite simply two people who've found themselves outside of society coming together and sort of having a common. They're both formerly villainous characters that are now a little lost, right?
Yeah.
Zuko, part of the Fire Nation, has been kicked out of that and is a little lost. Jet, having been militarily against the Fire Nation and nearly drowned a whole town to try and just flush out the Fire Nation people, and was willing to sacrifice all those innocent lives. Definite villain figure, realizing or having the error of his ways pointed out to him, and now again just being out there and kind of lost, and just a really simple concept of just bringing these two characters together and let them sort of share that moment and share that idea, and let them have a brief moment of understanding with each other that helps us a little bit more understand each of them. When you put those two characters next to each other, you realize how similar they are in many ways, and that helps you understand each of them separately as well, because you can sort of apply what you've learned about Jet to Zuko and Zuko to Jet. So it's just so simple but really effective, and it's handled perfectly. And it's just this fun little side plot. They just steal some food because the guy that runs the ship is hoarding all the good food, and they're all eating scraps. So it's a little Robin Hood story. And how perfect for two characters that are more shades of grey than black or white to steal for good, for to get food to others. It's just kind of perfect. Every scene that plot revolves around is exactly pitched correctly and handled perfectly, and doesn't need a minute more or a minute less to do exactly what it is trying to do. It was such a clever idea. I can't imagine when you first saw the Jet episode, Chris, you thought you'd ever see Jet again, for a start.
Oh, no, I think I did. I think I might have said that. Okay. No, I was keen to see. Jet, because also he was just so much. He was such a good character. It was like, why waste this opportunity? If anything, out of the two of them, I'd have maybe thought we might not see. So if you'd have told me to guess before this episode who comes back, Suki or Jet, I'd have guessed Jet.
Right, interesting. Yeah, so was that a big surprise to you then to see Suki back? Because I guess Suki's the furthest back. I mean, it was like, what was that, episode 3, episode 4? When we first visited Kyoshi Island. I'll double check that. But so it has been a long time since we've seen Suki. How did you feel about just that in general, that choice to bring her back, and how?
I loved it. Any character, Dan, that falls in love and then, that their girlfriend dies and becomes the moon. It's just owed a break, aren't they? They're owed a kiss on the cheek. Like, it's, I was just pleased. I was pleased for Sokka.
Yeah, so it was episode 4, Warriors of Kyoshi, when Sokka and Suki met, and I don't believe we've seen her since. Yeah,
I really love the Sokka character, and I'm kind of like, anything that's gonna explore that softer side of him, but also we get great comedy, like when she's like, I've noticed you've taken the sleeves off, you've been working out, and he's like, I've been known to lift a tree trunk. Like, yeah, I had a real sense of warmth when she came back, to be honest with you. I was really excited. And with Jet, I was also excited because it's like, it's interesting for the episode, but also the notion that, you want that payoff with that of,
yes,
the Aang and the gang appear, and then they see Jet alongside them working with Zuki, and you're like, what?
Well, there's also, I also wondered when I first watched this episode about, there's a tension to it, because obviously Jet staunchly anti-Fire Nation, and they even play with it a bit in this episode where there's a moment where he says, I know who you are, to Zuko, and you think, oh fuck, has he worked it out? Because that's not going to end well. We know how Jet feels about the Fire Nation. They've made that abundantly clear. And then he's like, you're an outcast like me. And it's like, oh. So they even play up like quite a lot of tension.
Yeah.
Because there is an element of, the bottom could fall out of that relationship any fucking second. Like, it wouldn't take much to really throw them into a more antagonistic situation. So yeah, and I also thought it was nice as well, reinforcing Iroh as well, sort of saying like, that he believes in second chances, which I thought was a really sweet thing to say in a world where like he was talking obviously a little bit about, the situation they were discussing at the time, which is sort of like, Jet was talking about his situation, but he was also a little bit referring to Zuko and a little bit himself. I mean, they're reapproaching this city that he once sieged. It's if anyone needs to believe in second chances, it's Iroh. So yeah.
Well, could you argue? I don't know if this is nitpick corner, because I don't know if I feel this way. But
Chris,
argue...
I've run out of snacks.
Fair. Well, then it's not nitpick corner. Could you argue that every time that's been referred to, it's been referred to with drama and tension? And I loved the gag. Who'd have thought I'd return to the scene of my greatest military failure as a tourist? I really loved that gag. I thought it was in character. I thought it was great. But could there be a voice somewhere going, oh, well, that cheapens it?
I think there could be, but I think they get away with it. It's proper on the line, though. You're right. You could say that might detract from like people's dramatic sort of feelings towards that whole situation. We know that obviously we've recently learnt that Iroh, lost his son in that siege, and that's one of the reasons they came home. So that, but at the same time, Iroh is. Okay, look, I'm gonna get real for a second, Chris. This will be fun. So I attended a funeral this week, and very sad affair. Lots of tears shed, but after the funeral, there was a level of catharsis because it was there was an element of saying goodbye, and there was, at the wake that followed it, laughter and jokes, and so it was for the listeners. It was my granddad that passed, and we went back to his house afterwards and discovered he is a hoarder, and was a hoarder, and had about 100 watches. So this person that we dearly loved and and was sad to have lost was then the subject of much mockery when we discovered he had bus tickets from the 50s in London. The man was a hoarder. And,
Wow.
So my point with that story is that sometimes one way to deal with a traumatic event is to go with a bit of humour. And if there's any character in the Avatar universe, I could imagine trying to see the funny side of a very tragic situation, it's Iroh.
Yeah.
And I think because of the character of Iroh, that's why it doesn't cross the line.
Yeah.
Any other character, and I think you'd feel differently.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And like I say, I don't feel that way. I think it's because to avoid the spoilers, we've just watched. Time-wise, we've just seen the first episode of Loki, and a lot of people felt a certain way about what's in the drawer. I'll phrase it like that.
Right.
And so I guess that kind of...
that
topic is on my mind.
If somebody had that criticism, I wouldn't disagree with them either. Because again, I'm acknowledging how close it is to undercutting some of the drama of the Ba Sing Se stuff. But again, I feel that people do find catharsis with tragic events in humour. Maybe not in the moment, certainly not in the moment, but like in the wake of as we heal, as we grieve, as we move on, we try to see the funny side in things, and I think that's a human nature. So Iroh of any of these characters would be the one I think that would jump to humour first. So for me, it's just on the right side of that line. But I absolutely, if someone said to me, "I hate this episode, I hate that Iroh moment, it really bothered me," I'd be like, "Yeah, fair point." Fair point, well made. Because I don't think it's an invalid criticism, because it's certainly not free of any poking, because it is I could definitely see that being an issue for somebody.
Yeah. Question on everyone's mind: Did you nab yourself a watch?
Yeah, we mate, right. I don't want to make light of it, but you know how at parties sometimes you get a goodie bag.
Yeah.
Well, everyone left with a watch. Thank you for coming. Here's your watch. Thank you for coming. Here's your watch. So basically, they had a big collection upstairs. It must have been about 100 watches, and family members took some as keepsakes. So but they weren't. Can I just make a clarification here, by the way? They weren't all old ornate watches. He'd been collecting and hoarding watches for years. There were some that were like literally bought last year. Like digital watches. Like, this is not like an old collection of classic timepieces. They were like watches he bought from Decathlon for 30 quid. Like, do you know, like running watches? Like, I just So I did get a watch. So because they were like, what do we do with these? We could give them to a charity shop, but wouldn't it be nicer if they were spread through the family? So yeah, a lot of family members left with watches, but it was kind of hilarious. So I got two. I took one to wear and one as a keepsake, like a nice one as a keepsake. And then like a really like cheap digital one as a thing I could actually wear, because I'm not going to wear the keepsake watch, I don't think. It's in a nice little box. Nice. So
Yeah, that's fair. And just for context, listeners, I did already know about the funeral. In case you're thinking, Jesus, Chris, be like sorry to hear that, or just wants to know if you've nicked a watch. Dad and I had already had this conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Not about the watches, but yeah.
No, the watches thing was that's for anyone wondering. I did leave with a watch. They were being handed out like goodie bags at the end of a kid's birthday party, and it was kind of mildly hilarious because it's just
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I
I completely agree. Iroh is the character. That's where I land on it. Iroh is the character you'd expect that from. So.
Right, exactly. So any other little quick notes? Let me have a quick scan. I think we've covered most of it. Suki's return. I see 50 avatars now. This is the things I wrote down. Refugee stuff. Oh yeah, I liked a little tiny reference at the beginning potentially to. Do you remember deadly poison or delectable tea? You know, that whole thing. When at the beginning, Katara says, "Peaceful ferry ride or deadly pass." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny." I don't know if it's intentional or if that's just the way the writers speak, but I enjoyed that.
That's good.
Yeah, I've already mentioned it, but I just want to repeat: the moon literally hanging over Sokka and Suki as they talk is genius, and will remain remain genius forever. I think we've covered everything there. It's a bit on the nose that Aang has kind of lost his hope, and they've written all hope is lost or whatever, or on the sign above the.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. A lot of that is on the nose. Like at the end, when it's like you've given me back my hope. I know what we should call our daughter. Hope. I really wanted. I nearly text you. I really wanted it to be. You've given me. We want a name that's unique. Da da da. You've given me back my hope. I know what we should name our daughter. Appa.
For some reason, I thought you were going to say you give me back my hope. I know what we'll call her. Back.
It just that I'm like, Jesus, you don't need to say the word hope 3 times for us to get it. You could have even just had, oh, I know what we'll call her, and then a smile between the two or something.
I think that's fine. And then maybe, I don't know. It's one of those things. How do we feel about let's very briefly, because we haven't talked about it. Let's so there's a baby born, Aang flies off, and then we see the drill. How did you feel about that? Like that cliffhanger for the episode?
Yeah, I thought it was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like, it's just it's a sense of like shit. I wondered whether his sister's on it or part of the drill. Yeah, I liked it, and I think they've been doing a lot of cliffhangers this year. Like, I think it's fine. It doesn't warrant it being a 2-parter, but I'm sure that will come up in the triv.
Yes, it will.
But yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So let's while we're here, then let's get on.
Let's triv it up.
Triv it up. So this episode did air alongside its the episode that follows it, the drill, as a 1-hour special titled. And I mean that when I say inexplicably, I really do mean inexplicably. This was inexplicably titled Avatar: The Secret of the Fire Nation.
Yeah, well, that's what it's titled on Netflix. And I must admit, I watched it and went, huh?
Yeah. Don't understand.
Why?
But what's weird about this is, so the 2 episodes that preceded this aired on the same day as a like TV event, what was it called? The Fury of Aang, right? Yet Netflix does them as separate episodes. These 2 aired together with a little subtitle, a little marketing title for the event of that, those 2 episodes airing together, Avatar: Secret of the Fire Nation. Netflix and Amazon, it turns out, in other countries, strapping them together.
Yeah, it's
weird. Don't get it. Do not get it at all. Yeah, I just can't figure out why at all. But apparently it worked, because until the finale of the show aired, this special was its highest rated episode. It had like 4.4 million viewers on the day, which for a Nickelodeon thing is ridiculous. That's insane. You know what I mean? That's a lot of viewers.
I was going to say, for Nickelodeon, that's nuts.
Yeah, that's a lot of people watching. So this was kind of like peak popularity, I guess. And look, the thing is, they did it on Steven Universe as well. They had a couple episodes together and gave it like a little subtitle. But it's a marketing thing. It's not the official title. The fact that's trickled through into DVD releases and the digital releases through like Amazon and Netflix is bizarre to me, because the book 2 DVDs don't put them together, but they do have it as Journey to Ba Sing Se Part 1, The Serpent's Pass, Journey to Ba Sing Se Part 2, The Drill, which is
that's
also...
fine. That's much better titles.
Yeah, but do you not think calling it Part 1 and Part 2, like, you've seen this first episode, the story of them crossing the Serpent's Pass and Aang having lost his hope and getting this pregnant lady and her husband across the, to the other side... It's all resolved in this episode. There's no... Other than the cliffhanger, which is literally the last 2 minutes of the episode, why is this a part 1 and 2? Why is this any more a part 1 and 2 than anything else that's happened this season when they've ended with a cliffhanger?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Fair enough.
Yeah, it baffles me. Just lost on me, that is. Oh, by the way, worth noting, we didn't mention it, but there is a cool little thing in this episode where about halfway through, Suki mentions that the Fire Nation are working on something big nearby, and no one's got a glimpse of it, and no one knows what it is. And then at the end of the episode, obviously, we see the big drill, and it's like, well, there you go. That's what they were working on. Big drill.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, got it. You only know. I think people tend to only notice that on the second viewing, because obviously when they say it initially, it's like, whatever. It's just like a little weird passing reference. You don't really know what it's to, so you just sort of kind of don't ignore it, but you just move on quickly, and then the answer actually comes like 10 minutes later. So they had special screenings of this this two-parter titled "The Secret of the Fire Nation," sponsored by Upper Deck Entertainment. So Upper Deck Entertainment were just launching the Avatar trading card game at the time, so they did special premiere screenings at numerous cities throughout the United States where they had these two episodes, sort of 6 days prior to it airing on television. It's listed the cities here. Ann Arbor, LA, Louisville, I don't know what I'm doing. Louisville, New York, Philadelphia, Providence, and Washington, D.C. The theaters were all showing it, and then they had like demonstrations of the Avatar trading card game. Like I guess in the lobbies of these cinemas. Yeah, I guess so. It's not clear, but yeah, I thought that was fun.
Because you just is it easy? Sorry to interrupt you, but
No.
It feels like it's easy to forget how big this show was then when it was actually airing. Because I guess I've only ever heard people talk about it retroactively,
Right.
So assume retrospectively. Sorry, so assume that it got bigger.
Right.
Through that and has built over time, but it sounds like special screenings, 4 million viewers.
Yeah.
Like this show was fucking huge from the off.
Yeah, well, I mean, second season is like it took.
Well,
it
yeah,
definitely took
no.
it. It definitely hit its like. It definitely hit its like cultural phenomenon status at some point during the show's airing. I mean, it was, as I've described in the past, it was being talked about at a Dungeons and Dragons tournament I attended at a comic book store that I didn't actually partake in. It was already a thing people were excited about and talking about, like, season 1, season 2, and that's, I think, roughly where I would have jumped on, so there was definitely a moment sometime around the second series where it went from a Nickelodeon show to this thing people were like, you must watch this is incredible, and then from there it just seems to have spread and then of course it found a whole new audience during the subsequent years as it got added to different streaming services, and it had a big boom again last year when it hit Netflix during the lockdown. A lot of people got a chance to rewatch it. So yeah, it was a slow journey to full on cultural phenomenon, but that movie happened pretty quick when you actually think about it. From the show airing to a full Hollywood movie airing, that should give you an indication of how like they were like, shit, this is a hot property, we better cash in while we can.
Yeah.
No, definitely around the second season it was picking up a very, very big following, and that's I think reflected in its lasting appeal. This episode marks Jet's first appearance since the episode Jet, but in this episode he's chewing a piece of wheat rather than a twig like he chewed in in his first appearance. That's in the trivia. I thought, okay, I guess that's kind of trivia. Fine.
Yeah.
Is that interesting? I don't know. Piece of wheat. He's replaced the twig with a piece of wheat. I don't know.
I think that's interesting.
I think that would, I don't even know if that qualifies as mildly interesting, but there you go. As Aang and the others reach the gate to the Serpent's Pass, they notice the words "Abandon Hope" carved onto the gate. This could be a reference to the words that peer above the gates of hell in Dante's The Divine Comedy, which read, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." I think there's an element of it being a slight reference to that, but also obviously a very 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 over the head sort of obvious, like quite clumsy reflection of Aang's story from this episode. But anyway,
it's fair. Yeah, I just think, like, obviously it's not as good a child's name, but I think it should have been more about, for me, the story should have been more about Aang needing the confidence to trust that it's more about trusting that he's not going to turn into the rage kind of monster he turned into last episode, as opposed to hope for finding Appa. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. So Katara parting the waters of the gap. I agree with that, by the way. I just didn't have anything to add. Katara's parting the waters at the gap mimics Moses parting the Red Sea in the Exodus story of the Bible. Yeah, kind of. And then finally, in 1967, Paul McCartney let a stranger claiming to be Jesus Christ sit in on a Beatles recording session. McCartney apparently was reported to have said, "Well, there probably isn't, but if he is, I'm not going to be the one to turn him away."
I mean, what's happened since? Have people been going up and being like, "Oh yeah, can I have millions of dollars? Cheers."
Yeah, I'm
Do you think
Jesus,
he's
but I'm
still-
Jesus, by
I
the way.
Yeah, I don't reckon Paul McCartney still lives by that logic.
No, not now that story's out in the world. So there you go. We have a question. We have a listener question, Chris. For those listeners, I should say. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing it, but yeah, for some reason, not for some reason, for an attempt at annoying Chris that has now faded, I was adding not Avatar-related trivia to the end of trivia. I guess we're just going to keep doing it for now until I get bored. That's what that is.
It winds you up so much that I can't believe... I don't know what your plan was. Did you just think I was just going to get angry for 50 more episodes?
I think you've given me more credit than I even deserve there to think that I had any kind of plan. If you think I was thinking beyond the episode in question when I was doing that, you're mistaken.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I was just gonna I'm just gonna keep doing it until I get bored. That is the usual way of these things. So we have a question in from Justin, or J Bud as he's known on our Discord. It's Justin McJbud, so it's a whole thing. Who's asked us, as one of our patrons, has asked us, based on what you've seen of Avatar so far. So I'm going to point this one at you, Chris. What do you think the show needs to do before it ends? Do you have any hopes for where the characters' stories go, or any specific loose ends you want addressed? What do you want to see from a conclusion to this journey? So we've just passed the halfway mark, I think, last episode or the episode before. So now might be a reasonable time to sort of ask you, Chris, like, what do you think at this point a finale looks like? Or what is it you're hoping for, like, in terms of resolution from a finale?
I want that darn comet to appear.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I want the gang to create calm with the Fire Nation. Maybe Zuki turns. Is it Zuki, or am I just is? I feel like
Zuko.
I think it's Zuko. Fuck it, I always get it wrong.
Yeah, literally,
Zuko.
It's gotten to the point where I don't even bother. You do it so often now that, like, I don't even have the energy to correct you every time now, so I just let it slide, because what am I going to do? I mean, you keep... It's Zuki. You always call him Zuki or Zuku, and then, like, my internal just gut reaction is Zuko. Do it right. Say it right. Zuko. But I just have to turn that off, because... Otherwise, that's all I'd say all episode.
Fair enough. Zuko. I want to see Zuko.
You could go back to calling him Fire Dude, I guess, or Baby Zuki Poos. But I feel like Baby Zuki Poos is actually partly responsible for the Zuku fiasco that we're in now. So
yeah, that's fair. You added the baby. For me, it was only ever Zuki Poos. Where baby came from.
Little baby Zuki Poos.
Little baby Zuki Poos. I'd like to see Zuko turn, but maybe do like one great thing, like not turn completely. Draco.
We literally had the whole conversation, and you immediately got it wrong again.
There we go. I'm shit. It's fine. I don't know.
No, the thing is, I'm just like, I've accepted you're never going to pronounce it right, and that's fine. But like, it was just so funny to have a whole conversation about you pronouncing it wrong, and I thought, well, at least this time he'll get it right, like, because we've just done it. We've just, and even then, it was back to Zuku.
No. But like not fully turn, like you know, take a shot, but like Draco in Harry Potter styley, like kind of, or maybe more his mum, do like a good gesture, show that he's not all bad. Maybe he leads the Fire Nation, but in a better way. Iroh dying could add some good drama, but I don't particularly want to see that.
Sure.
I don't know what you do with Toph. I guess with Toph, you have her freedom, have her parents understand, and she kind of makes peace with them and is allowed to live her life a bit more. You got to assume you'd want Katara and Aang together in some capacity. But yeah, I mean, I think they've set that's probably not a very interesting answer, but there's a big comet that's coming that's potentially going to make the Fire Nation really strong. You want them to be defeated. You want that to not cause all sorts of shit.
Yeah, I think that's. Yeah, I mean, I think this show different. Is different in many ways to something like Steven Universe, where they were a little bit more. They chose to sort of hide the tracks, as it were, So it was harder to sort of follow them to see where it might be going. They went a bit more effort to sort of cover them up, whereas I feel like Avatar sets out a pretty serious, like pretty strict goal from day one that you can sort of see in the distance, which is Fire Nation have risen and taken that Avatar should have been around to stop that from happening, and completing his journey of learning all the elements and therefore being able to stop that from happening somehow. So you sort of assume that was, if that's goal from day one, then you kind of assume a certain amount of that, and the rest of it just comes down to like what does each character sort of need out of a finale. I think there is a certain amount of on railsness to the Avatar's storytelling style.
But that's equally though
you would expect.
That's all unfolded brilliantly, and that's exactly what you want. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing
right. Yeah, it's not a criticism.
There's nothing wrong or disappointing with that because that's the world they've set out.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal they've set out, and it's the world they've sort of it's the story they're developing, and it's that's the ending it sort of needs to have essentially. It's a great question. If you'd like to ask a question, like J Bud did, you can go over to the Patreon and join us for as little as $1 a month, and you can hear these episodes a week early. So the episode The Drill is already available on our Patreon. If you're listening to this through Spotify, Slowpoke's a week behind. iTunes, week behind. The Patreon, it's all there. Well, it's not all there, but the next week's episode's already there.
Next week, it's all next week's episode's there.
I'm really tired, evidently. I didn't realise how tired I was until we started this episode. We learned as we went this week where I'm at. What a great test. How exhausted is Dan? I don't know. Let's see. How many days in a row has he worked? and then we'll do a podcast and find out.
Like the idea that the audience are like, brilliant. Glad we were that experiment, guys. Cheers.
Well, I when we booked this in, I thought, we'll be all right. It's like it's not too early in the morning. I'm straight to work after this as well, so fun times ahead. Anyway,
it was even described as a cheeky analysing Avatar. Like you were like cheeky analysing Avatar on Sunday morning. I was like, yeah, sure. I don't think it's been cheeky. It's been fine. You're overthinking it, but it's been it's not been cheeky.
Oh, I feel like I've let you down. Then I promised a cheeky analysing Avatar, and have not delivered.
I've still enjoyed myself.
All right, guys. Next week I'm going to try and make it cheeky. That's a reason to go to the Patreon right now and find out whatever insane thing I come up with to make that a thing.
Yeah, check out our cheeky podcast next week, guys.
Yeah, there you go. God, I'm already regretting that promise, but I'll think of something. So if you'd like to ask a question or get the episodes a week early, you can do so. It also we also do episodes a week early when we're doing our Rewind Reviews podcast that no one listens to, but we really enjoy. So if you want to hear episodes of that a week early, you can also go over to the Patreon when those are airing and get those. Other than that, obviously, go support. The piece of art and the creator of that art that we use on every one of these episodes. The person who very graciously let us use their art to attract people's attention to our shitty podcast. And that is, of course, Raphodraws, who you can get at Instagram.com/Raphodraws. There's also a Tumblr, a Twitter, and a YouTube, which you can get access to from launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws. There's also a Redbubble account where you can get various things, t-shirts and mugs and all sorts of apparel that have various pieces of art drawn by the wonderful Rapho, who remains... who remains probably the only reason people click on this podcast. Initially.
Yeah, no, it's
because when you search Avatar podcast, right? There's a few of them, quite a few. It's a popular show. There's a handful, and I feel like ours does a little bit stand out because of the artwork. I reckon in the swath of Avatar podcasts, we have I reckon we've definitely pulled a couple of eyes to ours just as a result of having a really good piece of art. So
yeah, and that's all down to Raphodraws.
Yeah. So go support in any way you can. I think Raphodraws worked on a graphic novel too, which you can get digitally. That has, I guess, some storyline like ideas of like dealing with mythology and stuff that would probably appeal to fans of Avatar. So that's also worth acquiring. I did have its title in front of me, but I don't. I'll find out. I'll write the title down in my notes for next week so I can actually tell you guys what it's called. But I took a look. It's amazing. I need to properly sit down and read myself, but I haven't had a chance. But I will. That's everything for this week. All the other places you can get us, of course, you can get me and Chris on Twitter. I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham with 2 M's. We're on YouTube at Nothing But Static UK. The Patreon, if I didn't already say the link, is patreon.com/nothingbutstatic. And I think... Oh, yeah, you can go to nothingbutstatic.co.uk if you want to just see a list of the podcasts we release. Or, of course, the podcast app of your choice. Search for either our names or Nothing But Static and it'll come up with the other stuff we do. We did a podcast on Fringe, Steven Universe. We've got our bi-weekly podcast, Nothing But Static, where we just talk about TV in general. Rewind reviews. You can go check out all that stuff. And Overanalyzing the Garden Wall. It's all out there. Make sure you like and rate and subscribe and poke and star and heart and whatever you can do on your various platforms to show that platform that you enjoy our content. That also is a big help. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. As always, I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you guys in a week's time when we sit down to discuss The Drill.